You're listening to Everything Out There with your host, Steve Stockton.
Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to Everything Out There. Hello, and welcome again to Everything Out There. I'm your host, Steve Stockton, and join us once again on the phone due to popular demand, Cisco Murdoch. Cisco, how you doing tonight?
I'm just fine, honey. How about yourself?
Doing good. I made it through Thanksgiving, and this is a
Mhm.
Black Friday evening, so I guess I
Yep.
made it through that too, but I didn't leave the house. I'll do Cyber Monday, thank you. I don't like getting out. It's too peoply, as we
I love
said before the
people.
show, especially on Black Friday. I'm not going to go out there and punch my neighbor in the face to save
Mhm.
$15 on a big screen TV. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm like that. Who was that beautiful singer from back in the day in the '60s? What was it? Tapestry? Was it
Carol
not Judy
King.
Collins? Carole King. Thank you. I think didn't she do both sides now?
Yep.
I think about that and I think, man, I've seen Black Friday from both sides. So
Yeah.
many different
Indeed.
sides of Black Friday. I've done it from a Florida
I
guy. I've done it
Briefly,
from
I worked
retail,
in at
restaurant.
CompUSA as a computer store, and they lined up around the block to try and get a $99 laptop or something like that. And it was like
Yeah,
not even good laptops, but we
yeah.
had I think three, and there was 30 something people out there wanting laptops plus all the other stuff we had on sale. So yeah, I've seen it from both sides too. I went one time and got in it, but never again.
Yeah. I did a lot of retail as a manager, as a customer service manager. Now that right there takes you some big old Christmas ornament. Let's just put you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Especially in a craft store or a pet store, and I've done both, and a bar, managing a bar. That was probably the easiest because you just, buy them a beer or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Well,
I always liked it. I liked the hustle and the bustle of it,
yeah,
going in and
that's
getting
what
your
I like.
money
I used to, when I did enjoy a
and
crowd,
helping
I like
people.
the anonymity of a crowd. I'd like to get lost in the crowd
Mhm,
and just go to a crowded place like the mall during the holidays, not to
mhm.
shop or to do anything, but just to be in
Yeah,
that throng and be anonymous. And that was
yeah.
when I was much younger, back in my punk rock and goth days. I was
Mhm.
a perpetual outsider.
Yeah.
And it was just as a way to even feel like even more of an outsider was to get in a big crowd of people doing peoply things and just
Uh-huh.
do my own thing. But
Yeah.
I've since come to appreciate my own company and that of my lovely wife. She's a
There you go.
loner and a rebel like I am, and we prefer to keep ourselves to ourselves, and ain't
Yep.
nothing wrong with that.
It's like you make your own little patch of the world. But like when you're an empath, like you and I are too, because I think we always had it from talking to you for years. I know that you had it as a child, and so did I. And trying to sort all that, you go. I found that I love to go to say like the mall, even if you're just shopping, you didn't have no money. I was always fine like that, just seeing things because my mom and I always did a thing. She called window shopping. You just go down and look, and it was a parent's way of seeing what a child liked and what they were interested in, and their little sneaky way. That's the whole thing of going to see Santa Claus at the mall.
It,
Is
it
go to
was a
see what you
psyop.
want.
Yeah, you got to take
Yeah,
your list for Santa, and
right.
Santa's looking over at your mom, everything you say. And, well, I don't know if I can get you that this year. I don't think you'll get a pony, but yeah, you can get
Right.
that football.
Yep, yep, yep. And but it was so good, and it worked, and it was if done correctly. But that's basically what it was all set up for. They came with the department stores early. I can remember asking my mom, "Well, how come Santa's at Kmart and he's also down at the mall and he's over there at the whatchamacallit? He's in that parade, man. He's a busy dude." Well, he has helpers.
Yeah,
They always had an answer. So
I
when
always
I
had an
became a
answer
parent,
for it.
yeah, when
And
I
I
became a
left
parent,
cookies and milk out
I
for them,
was
and
ready. Yep,
by God, they'd be gone the next morning.
yep.
And
I made sure I
Santa
had
would leave
answers.
me a note, and
Mhm.
found out later it was in my dad's handwriting. Wonder how that happened. That
But
Santa
how
just
much
happened to
fun?
write like my dad. But
But
there was a magic to the
yeah,
holiday when you were
well, the
small,
magic was
when
your
you
mom
believed.
bringing your dad that paper and saying, "I need that Santa note." On
Yeah,
Christmas Eve, their little thing behind the scenes you never got to see.
yeah.
And it was
They
that kind of
put me
magic.
to
It was the
bed, and then
magic.
they go crazy with
Yeah,
getting out all the presents they had kept
yep,
hidden, some of them since summertime.
yep.
And occasionally I would
I
find
agree.
them in the back of the closet, like, "Hey, what's this?" And then
Yeah, 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 yeah. You put it back and pretend, and you feel
put it
bad.
back
You
and
feel
act
terrible you saw it.
surprised. But there was times when I was small growing up in the late 60s and the early 70s, or the mid 60s and the early 70s when I was real small, that, you walk into that living room, and I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, before daylight, and you
Okay.
walk in and there's a bicycle and a wagon and all these wrapped gifts. And that was the magic, was them
Oh my
watching
gosh, yeah.
me open the gifts and
Yeah,
stuff.
sure, sure, sure. And you coming up with stuff too and being thoughtful about it. And if you were, hitting hard times or anything like that, it's like, your parents just, or if you were lucky enough to have a decent parent or a guardian bringing you up or whatever your situation might have been, if you had that person that put that magic in, you want to do that for your kids too. And, you just come up with more creative ways of doing things. Like I can remember one Christmas, the kids were both my boys were probably, let's say 8 and 6, maybe perfect ages for that. Maybe a little younger. And so we had a big old dog named Oso, and he was half German Shepherd. In fact, in Cabin 22, the dog Rage is after this dog Oso. I mean, that was my dog, and he was very much like Rage, believe it or not. And he was. What I did was I always made them PJs on Christmas Eve, and they wore those PJs. And of course, Christmas morning, wake up in those. So I'd make them funky PJs, like the old flannel with the cap and the long sleeping gown, like a Dickens Christmas Carol or something like that, or Ninja Turtle PJs or something. And so I had this little red piece of felt, so I got an idea, and I went and I mixed like a little bit of like baby powder and cornstarch and glitter. And I got my husband's old work boots and made some footprints right by the front door, going out the door. And I told the kids, I said, "Oh my gosh, you better come down." Santa Claus came, but some of the presents were strewn all over. I think what happened is Oso might have thought he was trying to rob us, and I think he got a piece of his pants because I found this piece of red felt. It caught in his tooth this morning. So you better make sure that these are your presents because I think Santa went out of here a little upset. And they were like, "What?" And then my oldest come down and said, "Look, there's footprints by this is kind of magic snow. This doesn't feel like real snow." And, it was just like baffled him just for a moment, in that moment of waking up in the sleep, thinking, is it possible? Because I was so serious. I played it. And we'd have to do stuff like that just to keep it going a while. I remember once when my little one looked at me and said, "How come Santa Claus uses the same kind of wrapping paper you have?" I said, because he's mindful of Christmas decorum, and he didn't want to mess up my the atmosphere. You know what I mean? What I had going on, and he's just magic. That was the coverall magic. It's magic. It's magic. Why not? People have to come up in the world, and some people think that there's no magic in the world, and then people
No,
like us that know
I
the
used to do the
paranormal,
same
the
thing with my
supernatural,
nephew. I
are
had him
full of
talking
magic.
about believing about Santa and his elves, and one year me and him built an elf trap, and I
Mhm.
was old enough to know better, but I put a little piece of red flannel in it, and when
There
they
you go.
came over Christmas morning, like, "Look, we almost caught one," and he
Mhm,
believed, that was the thing.
mhm. That's it right there. You just, world too. And even if they know, I think as kids, I can remember multiple times playing along because I didn't want to disappoint them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My mom or whatever, she had gone through so much trouble. You know what I mean? I didn't want to ruin her good time. I remember one time, like you said, looking in the closet. I'll never forget it. We were out in Detroit, and it was. I'm telling you what. I don't know if the snow was worse or it just seemed bad because you were little, but it seemed like that stuff was always over my head. Where they had carved out way place for you to walk, and they had the big old where they push the snow along the road and stuff, and you'd be walking in that like a little kid. Seemed like you were walking in snow tunnel all the way to school.
Yeah,
But
I
I just
didn't have
remember
to
being
walk to
cold.
school in the snow, but I know people
Yeah.
that did, and yeah, that's how
Yep.
they
It was horrible.
described it, that
It was horrible.
over your
It
head,
was horrible.
cold,
I
dark,
hated it.
and,
Hated
uphill
every
both
damn
ways.
minute. I hated it. I'm one of those people that can say, yeah, I feel like I can remember walking and thinking about my mom telling me how they walked to school with her mom would make them put a hot baked potato in their pockets, on their coat pockets on the way to school, and then they'd eat them for lunch, keep their hands warm while they walked to school. But so I'd remember stuff like that. But that year I found, I was looking in the closet and I found a bucket that my mom stood up behind the closet and back behind all the clothes. I don't know how I saw it, and I'll never forget thinking that it was my niece and it might not have been mine. So and I woke up and I saw it and it was mine. And that was my surprise because I was so glad it was mine. Never let on that I saw it before. And I always felt guilty about that because I didn't want to take that surprise away from her because I know she probably had to work hard to get it. And it was a hot pink banana seat with the white basket on the front with the hot pink daisies on the basket. I'll never
That
forget it
was
as long as I
the
live.
stuff back
Yeah.
then. You had the banana
Yep.
seats and the big
Yep.
handlebars and the little basket on there. You were set to go.
I was set to go, and I had the streamers that came out of the handlebar holders. It
Yeah.
was the shiznit. But I had the black racing stripe on the banana seat and the little bar on the back, like to keep you from sliding your butt sliding off. Anyhow, I'll never forget it as long as I live. But
Yeah.
didn't get to ride it much because it was in Detroit. It was right outside of Detroit, Michigan. We were only there in the winter, but I got to take it with me when we moved. But I'll never forget that Christmas memories. There's so many of them, and even in the hard times, it seems like you remember those the most because I think people that care try harder to come up and be more creative.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
everybody families, whatever family you have, even shattered or fragmented, they pull together. The
Yep.
older kids help
Hope
surprise
so.
the
Yep.
little. It's all about making the little ones magic, and
Yep. 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 Doing something. I mean, how many old movies have we ever seen where somebody carved a horse out of a piece of wood and it made that kid's Christmas? I mean, back in the day, or
yeah,
or look back at what was that one that Walton's movie? A wonderful movie. If the listeners hadn't seen it, I highly recommend go and find it. It's free on YouTube. Watch it. Bake cookies. Do something. Wrap presents. But watch this movie. It's called The Homecoming. It's the first Walton's movie, and the whole thing. There's suspense. The dad goes missing, and there's a snowstorm, and John Boy has to go out, and goes periodically through the night, seeing all the different townspeople trying to find his dad. There's a Christmas pageant. There's all kinds of stuff in this, but the main thing is at the end. They each got one special thing, and they were so glad just to be together, and that love that went around, and the care, and how glad they were in that moment you know and I remember when John Boy, he wanted to be a writer, and the big thing about it was he thought his dad wanted him to be a lumberjack, or whatever it was that his dad did. I think it was a wood felled trees. He was had a lot to do with all of that. And he was like, he didn't want to be that. He wanted to be a writer. He wanted a shot at trying to get to college on his grades, how you did back then. And he was afraid to tell his dad, and his dad had bought him 2 writing tablets and said, anything you set your mind to, I suppose you're going to be good at it. So why don't you go ahead and give it a shot? And the whole thing, it was just the caring and the depth and thought. And I think what we did is we got into this push button materialistic thing, and it's all the thing on TV, and it's not so much understanding the character of the person that you're gifting as well. And I think that goes deeper. You know what I mean?
yeah.
If you can hang on to that, you can do that with no money.
And I've done the same thing. I've emailed somebody a gift card or a gift code. That's just as cold as impersonal as it gets.
Mhm.
But you don't know people like you used to, even
Yeah,
family members. I don't know what they want, what they need.
right,
Here's a gift card. Go pick you something out.
right.
But it's that seems kind of bad, but
It does, but
that
thought of
happens a
them.
lot. It was the
Somebody
thought
said
that counted. Yeah.
yesterday it was really funny because a lot of people split up and gone off into little groups, or gotten tighter in wherever they might be, or trying not to get out and do a lot. Or there's people that do the opposite and do nothing but go out and try to stay busy. But it's just a little different. And somebody was saying that Thanksgiving, people don't really get together or send cards as much anymore. They send gifts, and they'll text message somebody and send them a happy Thanksgiving gift, like a picture or whatever, says happy Thanksgiving. It's I'm not saying that's not thoughtful, but I'm saying it's
It's
not
not as
sitting down
personal
with
as
a box of
somebody a
cards.
note or a
Right.
card or a picture
Yeah.
in the mail. We used to
Yeah.
do that when I
Yeah.
was a kid. My mom would send my school pictures to some of my aunts and great aunts and things, and they
Yeah.
would write letters and exchange cards and
Oh,
stuff.
look at him. He
I
got some
I couldn't
game.
even
Yeah.
tell you the last time I got a Thanksgiving card, and last year I only got
Oh,
one Christmas card. So there you go. But I did get stuff online, even Thanksgiving. You sent me a couple of holiday gifts, so
yeah.
there you go.
But see, that's just it. You think of everybody and you want, hey, I hope they have a special day. I don't know what they're doing, but here's a turkey, a
Yeah.
sparkle, a glittery turkey, or something else. and you take a moment to do it, and they have some beautiful cards too you can send that way that are all little scenes and have little, personal effects to them and things like that, and all that's great. But there's something about taking away, pen to hand and eye to eye, and you know what I mean, a spoken word, a phone call, and I love you, you know what I mean, that connection, the energy connection, because it's just as important to living as it is to the dead, I assure you. And if it's that effectual to the dead, how much more effectual is it to the living? And we're just not paying attention to it. I mean, honestly, it's the same as you were talking earlier about going to the mall. Well, I can go to the mall, and when it's like, say, Christmas time, say, like on a Black Friday, I love the hustle and bustle and the movement. The energy is moving so much, and it's all like one great big ball of energy that the for many years it felt like the light of the season and the lightheartedness would fill it and overwhelm the whole thing. So you just felt good. It was a good experience if you were riding that wave. Now, of course, people could be in the same room and having the worst day of their life because they're having to wait in line, or they don't have the size, or they don't, you got that anxiety going on too. But the other stuff outweighed it, and now it's the other way. It's all anxiety. The people that are even working there don't want to. The people in line, everything's different, and so much anxiety that it almost makes it impossible to go to a place like that for somebody like you and I. You're gonna feel drained, even if it's a small version. You feel
Yeah,
drained. Yeah, you get
exactly. It
drained.
is a very
Everything's
draining
draining.
experience, particularly for an
Yeah,
empath. And I think for people that aren't too empathic, it can be a drain too.
yeah,
Just, "Phew, I'm glad that's over." But even when I did go out and shop in an actual store, I tried to do it all at once. I hated to go back out. Oh, I forgot Uncle Ed's gift. I've got to run back out and get him something.
right.
I'd go through my stuff and repurpose something. Well, I got this last year. I'll give it to Uncle Ed
Yeah,
this
so
year.
so passed along the fruitcake. We had a
Yeah,
joke of,
there you go.
yeah, everybody jokes about that. "Is this fruitcake I gave you last year?" I think now people do it with, like, bottles of wine and things like, but that's just it. That's the thing. It's like I have to have something instead of, I wanna pick out a few people that I wanna do something for, especially now. I mean, it's hard. So you think, "I can't buy anybody anything." Well, hold on a minute. Maybe you can, wash their car, maybe you can walk their dog a couple times, or maybe you can, mow their lawn, or you know what I'm saying? Paint the bathroom, whatever.
Yeah.
What do you do? What
Yeah,
is your
the
thing?
spirit
What
of
can you do?
giving can be anything.
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
can be
have to
anything.
be a material thing or even a tangible thing. It can be, like you said, it can be a good deed or
Yeah.
something just
Maybe
to
you
help
have an
somebody out.
elderly
That is
neighbor,
a gift.
yeah, that has a hard time getting a garbage can out. We have one lady that goes around and takes everybody's garbage cans out, has a hard time walking, and she goes around, on the morning of, and she'll go around and do all the garbage cans. It's just the sweetest thing. That it's a giving thing. It's something tangible, and it's something useful. It's,
Or like if you're like me, you go to Dunkin'
appreciating.
Donuts, pay for the coffee of the person behind you. Pay it forward, you
You can
know?
do that. Yeah, you can do that just to surprise them, and hopefully they'll pass it along. Usually, see, that's the thing. We were talking about energy and its effect of it, and that's something I've been thinking a lot of lately. I've been talking a lot about frequencies, vibrations, and Bigfoot resonating on certain frequencies, and passing, crossing over, and how there's a difference there. And we've talked about all those things, and what people seem to forget is when we're studying the paranormal, and if you're going into paranormal investigation, you're very focused on helping sorting out whether or not there is a ghost there. If there's a ghost there, that's the essence of a human being who once was living. And if you sort it to that point where you have it, it was a human being and a ghost, not a, now is this an earthbound, has is something that is a person who has crossed over and is coming back as a visitation because it's a museum and you're talking about them, and yeah, this was my place I once ran, this was general store such and such, or this was my home, I was the biggest home in town, and that kind of thing. And your energy, so they're coming back to visit, to check on their home, or that museum, or that home that they have, or that office building, or whatever it may be, and they're just checking things out, is like visiting there. Johnny Cash is a good example of that, because he's seen in multiple places. He's seen here at the Clay Hotel in Ferry Park, not far from me on the shore. He was part owner there, and he's seen often in a room that he used to stay in. and looking out the window at the ocean and things like that. And he's always a happy guy. Like if somebody walks in on him, a bellboy or maid or something like that, he always turns around, smiles, and gives them a thumbs up and disappears. But he's also seen in multiple other places, you know. But I don't think he's stuck. I think he got over there. He's, and he's checking things out. There's never any kind of, I'm stuck or, ooh, there's none of that. It's like, hey, and out. It's
Yeah.
just, I saw it multiple, or were they there? And, well, the either the bellboy or they walked in on it, and that was it. But in the case of, say, John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater, and also at the Surratt House, when people are talking about him or they're giving a tour and speaking about him, he shows up out of what I would theorize is probably more of a, yeah, that's me, like more of an arrogant kind of ego.
An actor always wants to hear what's being said about him or written about him, in the
100%.
press. So there you go. It's his way of checking his reviews in the afterlife, if you will.
Yep, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, and and very, very much so. But I don't think he is. I wouldn't say he's probably not crossed in his. See, again, folks, people listening, this is the thing. You can't put them all in a box, but you can get the idea of what area, So in like the John Wilkes Booth case, where he's popping up in places like,
The gift shop.
the gift shop where people are talking about him and looking through the books he's got there. He's still, through the mediums I've heard this from, and this isn't just, people witnessing sightings of him and things like that. It's more mediums that have gone to these places or investigators with sensitives that have gone to these places and picked up that he shows up and he's got this kind of arrogant air still, and still doesn't get, he still thinks that people are going to treat him the way that he did when he did this, a hero, like, hey, Sepcenter, Tyrannus, you know what I mean? Thus be the tyrants. I mean, he was like, I did it. Hey, I'm the hero for everybody. And then he was like, I don't understand why people aren't praising me here. When he was reading the papers, that's how he went out. So I think he's still got a piece of that with him. He's carrying that with him. He never crossed, because if he crossed, he wouldn't have all that. He'd have a little bit more of an understanding. He would be, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think he stayed, but I don't think he's stuck to one place. Whereas Johnny Cash, I believe that he's crossed and come back and he just visits because he can. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference.
Yeah.
Each one is individual.
That makes sense.
Well, every person is different, I mean, you and I are very similar, but we're different. We're going to react different to different things. You know what I mean? And so do ghosts. It's the
And
same
these spirits or ghosts, they're just as individuals in the afterlife as they were in life.
So, if I could get one thing across before it's my time, it would be that, that ghosts are as individual as we are. And, I think that would create a much better understanding of, some of the things that are going on with us, because that's also one of the things that gets me is we can spend so much time trying to understand the dead, and we don't really seem to have that same interest in understanding the living, but when we understand that, it makes it so much easier on us, because just learning a few simple things, like we can't control how other people act, only how we react to it. And it's the same thing with ghosts. We jump to conclusions. Like, how many cases have we talked about, Steve, that the person who was calm through the whole thing and just tried to watch it play out and sort it, say, as a ghost visitation showing up in a room or whatever, you got this apparition or there's something going on and they're trying to understand it rather than panicking. In a mild case, I mean, I wouldn't say to stand there and not panic when, you got furniture and stuff flying around your kitchen, and knives flying at you.
Flying like an Amityville type holiday.
Right. So, like, okay, let me give an example. So there's this young lady, she's a babysitter, and she had been babysitting for this young child, or at least for the family. I think it was just the one baby, though. And something happened, excuse me, to the father of the family, and he was killed in a car accident. So a couple months pass or whatever, and she comes back. She's babysitting the baby in the same spot for the mom. And while she's there, she hears the back door open, and she's sitting watching TV on the couch, and the baby's asleep in the room. And she hears the back door open like she has heard 1,000 times. And she hears somebody walking in. And she was shocked because the sound was exactly the sound that she would have heard when the father walked in, because he used to wear corduroy pants all the time. They made a very distinctive sound when he walked through the kitchen. And she's listening to the steps again that she's heard 100 times before, whatever babysitting. And she knows that in a second he's going to appear in the opening of the doorway from the kitchen to the room that she's in. And she just sat there. She said she gripped the couch and she just watched. She's like, this can't be happening. He's gone. And here he shows up, full apparition, doesn't even acknowledge her sitting on the couch, makes the turn towards the child's room, and disappears into the room that the baby is in. And she said she gripped the couch and she wanted to scream. She was froze. She said she can't take the credit for not doing anything because she couldn't do anything. She just froze in place. But she said in her mind, she told herself, she goes, I forget the guy's name, let's call him Jim. She said, that's Jim. I shouldn't be afraid. He certainly isn't going to hurt anybody. I think that was Jim. I didn't feel anything. She actually had the presence of mind to say, I didn't feel anything scary. I don't think he means any harm.
Yeah.
She's saying this in her head. And as she's saying these things, she's calming herself down. At that point, he comes back out of the room and comes back down the hall towards her and makes the turn to go in the kitchen, but then stops and turns around and looks right at her and smiles and nods his head and then walks back out the door. Here she hears the door close, and gone he is. And she said, and this was so important to people trying to understand ghosts, she said she is so grateful that she didn't panic at the first sight and run out of the room. And she said it would have been left with her a totally different experience at that point in time, or run towards the child. She said
Yeah.
she didn't feel any fear for the child. Certainly he's not going to hurt the child. He loved the child. And she sorted it, but she was so smart to do that. And then she said because she stayed and played it out, it was such a beautiful experience, and
Yeah.
she had a
There's a
whole
lesson to be learned there.
so different walk away feeling from the whole experience, and so much more understanding of love and afterlife. And she's so calm now, and it's just an amazing thing. And there's your magic right there, Steve.
Indeed.
That's how I feel about it. I agree. And
That's a good
again,
take
you
on it.
can't play that on every, situation and scenario, but in that case it worked well. And it's not the only case I've heard like that worked that way. Something to consider if you can get that kind of control. It's hard to stand to gain that kind of control around the living nowadays. So
Indeed.
so you're asking a lot of yourself, but just in case, if you ever find yourself in that position, maybe you'll think of that young lady and go, but now I can think of 1,000 things that would be very scary. I mean, of course you couldn't do that. A head pops out of a wall and just starts screaming in your face or something, which I've also heard. So
Yeah.
and then
Uh,
you said paranormal supernatural can go
yeah.
either way
As I
sometimes.
like to say, your mileage may vary.
Exactly. That's so true. Your mileage may vary. But I've had some really good experiences, and I've had some really creepy, experiences.
And that's just the thing. You never know from one to the next what's going to be and what's not until you at least stay there enough to get into it and see what's good.
Well, that's
And then
it.
it's
You
like,
hear
oh, this
people
is going to be
investigating.
nice. And then there's other times like, oh, I've messed up.
I heard. Oh gosh, I heard one today. And I was laughing. I was working in, I'm a floral designer, and we're making grave blankets, and it just seems it just follows me around, Steve. I can't get away from it. It's like our friend, the what was his title, Steve? He was a second generation cemeterian.
Yeah. I'd never heard
Cemetery,
that term before the other night when we were talking about it, but that's a good
isn't that
name
good?
for a caretaker or grave digger or
Yeah,
whatever
cemetery.
exactly that job description entails.
Yep, yep. He that was something else, but you know, um, I, you know, I, I don't know. It's just the thing is like I said, it's just you and I have had so many different experiences and talked about so many and been involved, and we try to warn people. We try to tell them, hey, this can be serious too. That's our whole business at this point. You're going in there and reaching into the darkness of the missing people, where the disappearing people, lost people, families that they're torn asunder because they don't know. It's such a horrible thing to happen to anybody or their family. that not knowing. It's such an
Yeah.
extra darkness, I believe, being on that side of anything like that, especially if it's a child. Any parent that's ever lost a child for a second at a Walmart or grocery store or whatever, you turn around, he was there 1 second, now gone. That brief second, that intense trauma that your body feels and your mind and everything else all at once, that just lingers and goes on and on and on. It leaves a dull kind of ache that never quite goes away, really.
Yeah, I can't imagine these people that absolutely have no closure ever. I mean, they go to their grave not
Mm,
knowing what happened to their child, or even an adult that goes missing without that closure. It's got to be impossible because you can't even
right.
begin to grieve properly or anything
This
because
is
you
it.
hold on to that hope that
Yep.
they might still be alive, they might still be out there, they might still be found safe.
Oh gosh, the torture of that, that's the living hell right there. That's a living hell.
Yeah,
And that's why I embrace, again, we were talking about where's the magic. Well, people, it's all around you. There's so much of it. And, those of us that see and choose to see that side of it, we're well aware of the darkness, trust me. But we know what beats the darkness. So we try to stay in the light. So we choose to see the magic. I choose to see the sparkle. I choose to see the miracles and the spirit signs and the angel numbers and the song that pops up out of nowhere, has no business being there and in that moment in your day, but there it is right at the right time. you know all of those magical moments, and you and I focus on those so much, and there's so many magical moments with ghosts saying, you would expect it from a spirit who has crossed over and has more knowledge and more ascended in their consciousness and their vibration, right? Wherever that vibration may be, because there's so many layers. If you think about it, it's just like a hot air balloon rising. That's what you're like. If you got a lot of things in your basket, you're gonna vibrate a little lower. It's
yeah,
just the way
exactly.
it's just the way it is. So you let that stuff out your basket, but let your balloon fly. So and you try to let go of that. So if you realize that this is how it is for the dead and you're going to vibrate on whatever you go out on, you start letting some of the little crap go. you know all right, I can't fix Irma Jean. She's off her damn rocker. She's batshit crazy. Why am I constantly taking phone calls from her and messing with my day? Just bless her heart and let her go be her. you know why are you putting up with this person's nonsense down at the office? You don't have to deal with that. Look, I'm here to work and do my job. You just keep your nonsense over there, you know,
Yep.
and don't get your chocolate and my peanut butter. I tell, I mean, it's just you find a way to just power through and be like that girl who sit on that couch, and you can run away screaming, and that's your experience, and that's what you're going out on. Or you can sit and choose to breathe through it and sort it and put it through your common sense filters and say, look, can I do anything about it? No, I can't, but I can sit here and watch the mayhem go off around me and not let it touch me, because I'm gonna put this light around me, and then I'm gonna get up and walk out of here and go about my business. You know what I mean? It's sometimes you've got to power through so I don't know, maybe you got to go down DMV, maybe you have to deal with that kind of nonsense, but instead of and the commiserating of it, you know what I mean? Kind of go in there, bounce it off, go in as a Tigger instead of an Eeyore, you know,
Yep.
and
Indeed.
you'll see your stuff is so much different. Your experience is so much different. Here's a good example. We're at an airport. Just imagine this was a nightmare from start go to finish. And my son and I are laughing through the whole damn experience because it was a snowstorm, where airports closed down, and it was I believe it started in Newark. We had a layover in North Carolina, and we were, it was one of those. Everywhere we went, there was a problem. And I sat and I watched, and it was also a life lesson for my son. He was young at the time, probably 13. And I said, son, I said, this is a great learning opportunity. I want you to observe the population. And I said, you can look around here. And we were talking about everybody's, by their body language and their characters. Like, this guy's on a business trip. He's in a hurry. He's going to, his blood pressure's probably off the chart. I mean, talking on the phone, you know what I mean? He's just like all these different people and their characters, right? And then all of a sudden they announced that there's going to be a layover, no more planes out till tomorrow morning. So now you're talking about it overnight. And people lost it. I mean, they lost Newark, New Jersey. They lost it. you know, and they are going up to the counter and they're yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs and everything you can imagine going on to these ticket agents and, you know, people that just told them they're going to have to sit in those damn chairs till tomorrow morning. Nobody's going anywhere. Well, you got to get me a flight out of here. There are no flights out of here. You know, you're going through the whole say over and over and over and over. So I waited and he said, you're going to go up there and see, you know, what's going on. I said, I'm learning a lot just sitting here listening. You know, they're asking all the questions. I'm listening for the answers. So I'm seeing how it's kind of going. And I waited. I let about 15, 20 minutes of that stuff go on. And then I went and I got in line. And when I got up to the counter, I said, hiya, honey. You want to just look at me and pretend I'm talking to you and you want to just breathe in and out for a few minutes? I'll stand here while you do that. And she just looked at me and her face just started melting into like compassion, just kind of. And I said, now, I'm not going to ask you silly questions. What I am going to ask you is, I would love to get here. I know there's no flights till tomorrow. So is there any kind of like hotel room or code you can point me to that would help me out here? Because either way, I'll stand here so nobody else can get to you for a few minutes. If you look down there and find me a
That's
discount
a good
somewhere.
trick right there.
And she went, I'll get you a room for the night. Then she said, yes, ma'am, I will. And nobody else had asked them that. They were just went up there and screamed. And yeah, I went out and I got my free room voucher, said, come on, babe. And we stayed in the nicest hotel, went and had a nice dinner, came back. And all these people that were up there yelling, still sitting in the same damn seats they were sitting in. I done had a shower, changed my clothes, had a couple meals. And they're sitting there wore out, just wore themselves to the bone. That's what I mean. You can go choose how you go in on your journey. You're in charge. You know, you're the one walking it. Who you want to walk with. You know, you want to have a nice conversation. You want to have a yelling fighting match. You know what I mean? So it's the same with ghosts. It really is the same with ghosts. If you go into a house and you start acting like that, you know, you're going to get just this. Either they're going to ignore you and go hide off in the corner somewhere till you're gone. They know you're coming when you're, you know, on your way, half of them, you know, oh gosh, something's on its way, you know, just like we feel when they're coming on their way, you know,
Yep.
and they go hide off and, you know, whatever's talking to you and playing with you, there's a lot of them that like to just play around, you know, she thinks we're such and such. Well, go ahead and tell her, you know, you know, there's all kinds of that stuff going on because here's the thing, folks, when you're walking around and you're getting EVPs and all that stuff and you're not doing anything else but just cold stuff, you know, you're just walking in or you're minding your own business, a ghost shows up, whatever it is. There's not a lot of high vibrational beings wandering around this earth waiting for you to turn the tape recorder on. They're mostly earthbound spirit, and either by choice, they chose to do it for fear of crossing or for other reasons, or they don't know they're dead and they're confused, or they're stuck in whatever mindset that they were in, and 1,000 other things. What they're not doing is in good, no pun intended, spirits to be having a conversation with a bunch of teens and a Ouija board or somebody else doing something else, you know, whether you're investigating or whatever. There might be something in that house. You might have something, you might have, you know, a bunch of spirits in that house and have one really nice one that knows a little bit about communicating and decides they want to speak into the computer or come over the Ovilus or communicate in whatever way. And then there might be 10 other ones that one's not even aware of. You know, we don't
Yep.
know. It takes a lot of different equipment, natural and otherwise, people with talent and abilities and things like that. I've talked to some absolutely fabulous psychic mediums. Katie Turner here just recently. And we got into a discussion of, okay, are you seeing a residual? Are you in a time slip? Did you step into a, you know, there's so many things going on right now. You can't just assume it's one thing, you know, and ghosts can manifest as they see fit, depending on what they know they can do and what their abilities are, what they've learned they can do. Look at the movie Ghost. You see, there was a lot of
Yeah.
truth in there about, you know, he had to learn how to move the penny. He had to learn how to not think about it the same way as a living human, but different, you know, and it
And
took
I
him
think that
a minute.
whoever wrote that film, they had a
You,
lot of insight. They had some personal experience that translated to
they did.
film, or they talked to people. They did their research. They did their homework on that movie.
I would say for a lot of ghosts, it's a little bit about learning how to drive a clutch, you know?
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, I know it sounds funny, but like you're sitting around and you want to do something, but say you're so angry and you're focused on this, and man, I'm dead. I can't believe I went out like this and I want to do. All right, well, where are you in that mindset? What you really want to do is go show your wife where you left the will, because she's never going to find it. And she's such a mess and she misses you so bad. And you see that, and you're stuck in that. I got to get her to listen to me. How do I get her to, you know what I mean? And every time somebody in that situation gets to come back and tell us, or either through a medium or channel, or some other way, what they kind of let us know is, once they calm down, it might take years to do that, and then what's happening in between, you see. But once they calmed down, they were able to change their situation, and that seems to be the secret through the whole thing, Steve. It's like in near-death experiences, there's been people that have, not everybody gets a tunnel of light. Some people get a dark tunnel, and they wind up in places like, what's going on? The minute they stop fear and they stop the panic and they think of light, they start coming out of it. So it seems that where you focus is where you're going to be, if that makes sense, where you
Yeah.
resonate on. Because how many people have we heard, how many stories from people that have wonderful abilities, Steve, that we know, remote viewers and all different labels you want to mention. And they've had to go in to that in between space and maybe talk somebody into lifting their head up, looking up, getting into the light, and trying to remember happy memories and things like that, just to raise their vibration, to get them to look up and stop shuffling and go, hey. And all of a sudden they start being able to see the light. That's an amazing thing. But I would say that that probably works for the living too. And I think the similar thing would be, like, if you're in a bad mood and one of your jerk friends comes over and just starts acting silly till they get you to laugh. And you're mad at them at first, but then you kind of like, you start laughing and you feel better. It's that kind of a thing, just like with ghosts. It's like you get them to laugh or raise their vibration, or get them to resonate with a song, a taste, a smell, candy bars, something, something that is familiar to them. I mean, gosh, if it'll help pull people out of a coma,
Yeah.
perhaps it also does the same to a ghost coma.
That's very true.
I mean, there's a new phrase, ghost coma. Write it down, Steve. That's ours right now.
Well, yeah, we'll copyright that one.
I have ass soul and I have ghost coma. Because listen, there's been times, when my son was in a coma, I tried everything. And vanilla, the smell, I watched his body language and his muscles and everything else when different people came in with different smells or said different words, or played music in the background, he reacted differently to, and his heart rate would calm down, things like this. But there was this one nurse, and you could smell her when she walked in the room. I don't know whether it was her perfume or her shampoo or whatever, but you know what I mean when person, you can smell them,
Yeah.
sometimes pleasantly and sometimes not. But
Yep.
she came in and she smelled of warm vanilla, right out the bat. It was something with that hint of, she was wearing something that had a warm vanilla base note to it. It was wonderful. And every time she reached over him, he'd take it. Even in a drug-induced coma, I saw this difference. So I telling you what, man, I got my purse and I went down that elevator and I hit every place I could till I found some vanilla. And I would put it under his nose and bring him out and put his heart rate down and things like that when he would get upset and things. So again, it's every sense. Don't forget every sense. Their senses work the same. That's why you have jumpers, like our little friend at the bar, Steve,
Yep.
because they want to jump in for a second and they can't, because listen, earthbound spirits aren't tasting anything. They don't have any of the ascended abilities that a spirit has once it's crossed over. I say this with, it sounds like I have, I don't know how you could take that. And a lot of people could say the way I said that, might have a little arrogance on it or whatever. It's not, it's adamant. I mean, after 60, 50 plus years, it's something that's happened time and time and time and time again, from multiple different sources, from multiple different ghosts, from multiple different spirits, mediums, name across the board, so many, that at this point it's impossible for me to dispute it, that once you cross over, you lose so many of those earthly things. You carry some with you, because some of us will not let that go. We carry our luggage around like we're, coming back from the airport and it's everything we own. That's just the way we are. We carry our past and our past regrets and our the jealousy and the, what'd she have to say that for? Why is she always like, all the little things, they all add up. Some are pebbles, some are rocks, some are boulders, and they weigh
Well, you
us.
talked about putting rocks in your pocket. That's a good analogy there.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I said, if you don't like that one, the hot air balloon. How, the more rocks you got in that basket, the lower you might float around, but you're gonna go low, you know. Eventually you're gonna bang into something. You know what I mean? You got to get up there. And that's basically the way, ghosts, it seems that once they've crossed over and they, wherever that may be, whatever they go through, meeting ascended beings, judging themselves, seeing their life, play through, and where they made the mistakes and how they made that person feel. And it doesn't only work for the bad. You have to understand that when you see your life review, you also see the good things that you did that actually had more of an impact on the person than you ever thought. It might have been some little thing to you, but it might have been everything to them. That's why I'm saying now, especially at this season, money's tight, this is tight, whatever. Dig down and look into your heart and do something nice for somebody. It might be some little thing. And even if they don't know it was you that did it, that's even better. You know what I mean? Because what the boost it gives your soul and the boost it gives their soul is almost like a trifold.
Yeah, a random act of kindness can go a
Mhm.
long way.
And that way it makes you feel, you notice that if you do something like that, you feel good for a few seconds or something, and maybe a couple times through the day you think about it, makes you smile a little bit. It goes on for a while. You have no idea how long it, made them smile. It might have creeped them right the hell out.
That's
You don't
true.
know. But you don't know how it affected them. You know what I mean? And but that's the thing, as long as you're doing it out of love and kindness, you know what I mean? And
Right.
I've seen people doing that. It's like how many times you say that old I can't remember what it was. It might have been was it the old Laughing with the old man with the glasses and the hat, long coat and cane, and then the woman would always beat him with the purse? That was
Yeah,
Laughing.
Ruth Ann Buzzy was the woman.
Ruth
I
Ann
can't believe it
Buzzy.
was Artie Johnson, I believe, was the man.
Yeah, and he'd keep trying to do stuff like, help her to her chair or something. She'd hit him with her purse and he's trying to do something nice for her, and she'd think it was creepy, and she'd be hitting him over the head with the purse and stuff, and he'd keep trying to do nice things for her. You remember that?
Yep, I
Like, hold
remember
open
it
the
very,
door, and
very
she'd go
well.
through the door, but she'd turn around and hit him with the purse a couple of times. You know, it's just a weird little act they had, but that's kind of how some people are in life. No matter how many nice things you do for them, they're going to always react in that sour manner. But if you did it, you know, oh,
Yep, I read a story like that where a man was happy. He'd won the lottery or had something good happen to him. It wasn't anything that big, but he grabbed the first woman he saw and kissed her, and she was so offended. She had him arrested. She pressed charges and all these things, and she was an older lady. And then several years later, when she passed away, she had left everything to this man in her will for that one kiss. It thrilled her, but it made her mad at the same time.
you might do a good deed and it's not received as well as you thought it might be, but that doesn't belong to you. As long as you did that thing out of love and kindness or whatever it may be, out of a good place, it's up to them. It's in their balls in their court now. Don't ever worry about that. You did it that way, let it go. Don't sweat the small stuff. And that's what a lot of them come back to say. I think one of the most
And really, it's all
amazing
small
things.
stuff, as the saying
Yeah,
goes.
it truly is. But again, it doesn't mean the small stuff doesn't count, because it seems like the small stuff counts the most too. Why you did something. Okay.
Yeah, the small things add up to the bigger things, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's the little things that have such an effect on, because like we always think, all right, say some of these imagine somebody was killed in a nefarious way, and that person got, wasn't quite getting the help from the authorities that the family thinks so, or whatever the situation may be, and everybody's obsessed in finding this thing, and begins the living is just going in this cycle of grief and loss and anxiety and everything else, and this can carry on. In your cases, in the missing that you do, you probably see an awful lot of this. And I'm not saying that's wrong, and I'm not criticizing it in any way. I'm just saying what is. It's a normal thing. And, that kind of grief and things like that. If that person finds a way to come through, the one who's passed, in the victim of the story, or the deceased, gets a chance to come through, their first message is, don't do that. Let it go. It doesn't matter anymore. The universe will take care of it. This person's journey, whatever, all those messages that all lead to the same idea of, I want you to live and be happy. I want you to love again if it's a spouse. I want you to go out and have a good time. I don't want you to feel this way. I'm fine. I love you. Love is eternal. You know, don't live in this grief cycle. And like, end that circle of grief. Don't let it take anybody else down. It's already done its damage. Now we have to, let it out there in the universe and beat it with happiness, beat it with you living. And it's almost like, the as sappy as it sounds, it's almost the thing that with on the Titanic with Rose, and I swear he could have got on that door. But anyway, where he's saying, "You go live, Rose, go live," and she did, and she went out and she did horseback riding and flew a plane and went in a hot air balloon or a zeppelin or something. She did all these wonderful things, like she was living for both of them. That's kind of the message they come back to say. I don't want you to be in this grief. And I think animals do that even more so, because they care more about us, just like when they were living, than they ever thought about themselves. That's just their character. Dogs care they know when you're upset and when you're sick or when you're going through something. Cats, same thing. A lot of domestic animals you can fit in that category. You know, I mean, elephants. I mean, it just
Yeah,
goes out a
I'm
lot
sure
wider than
to
we
some
think.
degree, any kind of animal,
Horses,
domestic or
anybody.
otherwise,
Yep, yep.
can sense feelings and emotions.
100%. Horses, you name it. We tend to, society has kind of cut things off. I mean, I've seen people, have wonderful, relationships with ravens, crows, I mean, squirrels, raccoons, name it. You know what I mean? Because you show something living kindness, including even plants and trees and everything else, it's going to respond in kindness, in most cases. I think probably human beings and, maybe predators of some sort, I don't think a shark's gonna, well, I don't know. It depends on the shark and the kindness,
Yeah, you never know.
but
And
you get
what do
my
they
point.
consider kindness?
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's like, I don't wanna find out. I just had to back out of that one quick. You know how I feel about sharks. I don't even like thinking about them, Steve.
Oh,
It's just,
yeah.
ooh, you know. But it's just we always say it anytime we get together. We get to talking about stuff like this. It's so crazy simple and so amazingly complex at the same time. Why wouldn't it be? But it seems the things that human
Yeah.
beings really struggle with is because it's the little stuff that vexes us. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like the big stuff we argue about and debate over and theorize, but it's the little stuff that really clicks us in. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
messes us
yeah,
up.
I get it. It's just the tiny little things that bother you the most sometimes. The big things you can deal with, but it's
Mhm.
the annoyance of those little things because it's a continued annoyance. And since it's a little thing, you try not to get too upset about it, but it
But there
adds
it is.
up.
Like Ben Franklin said, like a raspberry seed in your tooth.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It just will not go away, and it irks us. I think the thing that gets us the most is the relationship with other human beings, and that's what is, in a lot of ways, that's what staggers us as dead too. There's no different, because think of all the things that people stay back for or whatever. A violent death, of course. I mean, murder, of course, like that. All those things. But again, too, the thing that blows my mind, Steve, is when you wrap your head around the fact that how often and for how long have we heard people say, "Thank God they're gone. I don't have to deal with that person anymore. I don't ever have to have." I hate to say it, folks, but nope, they're not. And the more you think about it, the more you tether to them, they're still around. Especially the ugly ones, the mean spirited, they were nasty in life, and the assholes. Asshole in life, you're going to be an asshole in death if you haven't crossed over and worked through all that stuff with higher and more enlightened beings, whoever they may be, that helps you through this. And you go through and you get recharged and you get sorted and oh, I get it now. Oh, that does make sense. Ooh, shouldn't have done that one. Ow. Had no idea it had that effect, you know. And again, we tend to not think about the good stuff that happens during that time too. It's like, I had no idea when I did that it meant so much to her. Oh my gosh. Because I said that, she went on and she never forgot that. And it had something to do with her, moving on and making that choice and getting what she wanted or getting that job or whatever it may be. You don't know. pebbles. Drop a pebble in the still waters, and how far do the ripples go? Not only as far as you can see, but past that. And that's what I think you get to see on the other side, and you get some of those answers. And some of us go through it faster than others, just like here, you know. And I think it has a lot to do individually. And I heard a person describing their NDE. It was absolutely wonderful, near death experience, and they got so much from it. So much life changing information. They pulled out the fact that you pretty much, when you go out on the vibration that you were in. So that's why people have a little bit of a stagger in, if they go out unexpectedly, say, an instant impact kind of thing, rather than a little bit more of a knowing where you're, that kind of thing. It's a whole different experience, but it doesn't mean that there's any kind of infinite finish for you. What I mean by that is, I heard this medium, and I don't know who it was. It was years and years ago, decades. And they were on a radio show, and they said all suicides don't cross. And I got so aggravated and so angered by that I went and studied that for decades, so I could come back and say that's bullshit, and how things like that make me a little angry, because I think about all the people that listen, that are in, say, in the situation that a lot of people you deal with, Steve, are in, the missing or the whatever. And it's not true. You cannot put a blanket brush on everything like that, because I've known some that have done that and then came back and kind of partially crossed and got some good information from enlightened beings, and then came back and helped people that were living through different little things, in their popping in their dreams and going, man, get off this path, it took me out, I don't want that to happen to you, or something like those lines. Multiple cases. And I've seen strangers do it for strangers, and all because they know that if they do that, they can go out, they can get a little juice, a little extra boost, into that light, in a brighter light. Not to say that they're not in light, and it's just, that's what it's all about. It's about that vibration, and that trying to achieve that higher vibration, letting things go, taking a little bit more on not so much full frontal face plow, but maybe a little bit more on the chin, and turn your head with it, go with it, move with the punch,
Right. You
and
got to
just,
roll with the punches.
yeah, know that they're going to be out there in the universe. Hearts will break, bones will break, but we're supposed to love each other through it, you know. And there's no, and to understand, there's no winners in a war, because we're not supposed to be hurting each other. We're so far away from that, and and when they cross over and they get to come back, especially the ones that are really been learning over there too, because the learning never stops. We're here in school. This is one of the toughest schools there is to incarnate to. I feel very strongly about that fact as well. You know, it's almost like you get double the points. What I mean? It's like,
Right.
he's like,
Right.
you're going back there. Woo, okay. See you when you get back, but good luck with that, And so here we are. Well, if we chose to be here, what are you doing with it? You know,
Right.
it's like, what's important? Let's find the important things. And if nature and energy comes from nature, then we're supposed to be as connected to that as possible. The further you get away from that, the less normal you're going to feel, the more struggle you're going to have. Little things like that, to just, because why do you feel so good when you go and take a walk in the woods or garden, or sit in the sun in a lawn chair, even for a little bit, hug a tree, plant a plant, whatever. Even people in apartments that have plants, and how much they get from that, and how much energy those plants give back. Ask anybody that has ever loved a plant. It's true
Yeah.
though.
It is.
We're natural beings, and the further that things and circumstance and those that would not have our best interests in mind try to push us away from, and try to separate us from, via chemicals and things in food and things in the air and all those other things, it moves us further and further away from our natural being. And the closer you can get back to that, the better you're going to feel. It just makes sense. you know I'm not using all the big words, and I'm certainly not a scientist. I'm a paranormalist. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed. I love that word. You coined that one too.
I did. I think I did. I don't know. Sometimes, words just come up to me. I don't know whether, I'm not going to say that nobody in the history of the world ever said it. I'd be silly. But
But it's a good
I'm
term
using it.
for what we do, and I like it.
I'm using it because there's really nobody's really sure what it means. So it's good.
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
stuck.
if you make your own terms, then you can define those terms. So
It's my game. I'm gonna make it up as I go along. Yep.
there you go.
So, but it's funny because it's almost like a silent little protest against labels because nobody, like I said, nobody has any idea what that means. They're like, oh, okay, that looks like something. Yeah, that's
Well, yeah.
it's
How can they say you're not when they don't even know what it
know what
is?
it is.
You're a what? A
Yeah,
paranormalist. Oh,
certainly
okay.
no expert, and I'm not a, Ghost Whisperer was taken. I would have loved that one, but it's like band names. It's like shoot, the band won that one. The band. You know, I've
Yeah.
heard so many great band names in my lifetime. You know, and I still do it to this day. Somebody said something the other day. I said, "Man, that's a great band name." You think about it, or that's a song. Yeah, it's funny the way our brains work.
Yeah.
And something I can tell you guys is, you pass. That doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It's only that it's supposed to be a mystery. You're not supposed to have the answer because if you did, that would be a cheat. That would like having the last page to a murder mystery before you ever start reading the book, And there are people who do that. I can understand. I just want to know. I just want to know. Okay, well, here it is. You are responsible for your choices, Bad will bring bad. Good brings good. Not everything that you wish for, you should have. you know,
Yeah. And you
all
have to
prayers,
be careful what
yeah,
you wish for because you might
yeah,
get it.
all prayers are heard. And, sometimes the answer's no, and sometimes it's like, okay, but I don't think that's the best thing for you. But if you want to go that route, go ahead,
Yep. You asked for it. Here you
There
go.
it is.
Yep.
And the big question I get asked all the time is, well, if I have a guardian angel, how come I had that car accident? Because maybe you were supposed to have that car accident. Did you learn anything from that? And it's not just us. If you learn that each one of us is connected, it's just like that. What is that butterfly effect kind of thing?
Yep.
It's every one of us is connected, but it's more than that. It's not just a butterfly. It's a whole swarm of them, all different levels, all at the same time, and it's all through time. Anything that's ever existed or will exist at the same time in multiple different levels and dimensions. It's like, okay, but
It's
we're
mind blowing,
yeah,
truly, when you stop and think about it.
yeah, and you're just this speck in time. You're this speck in time. And and there's people who are content to believe that that's all it is. I'm a speck in time. And nothing I do matters and nothing that I do is going to affect and
And
I can
that's
do
to
what
me,
I
that's
want.
a sad way to look at things.
Yeah. And also I can do what I want and there'll be no retribution or whatever because nobody saw me do it. Well,
Yeah.
that's
I've
not
had
how it
people
works.
try that on me. It doesn't work out that way.
It doesn't work
And
out
that's
that
one of
way.
my favorite things. The response to that is, how'd that work out for you?
And everything is recorded. And then you got to go back and watch it all. And keep in mind, you're not watching it in the state you're in now. You're watching it in the state you will be then, and I assure you will be different. I assure you will be different. You will care, you know, and you'll see that effect. And now that changes people. And somebody like Daniel Brinkling now, he had to, I think he died, didn't he have like at least 3 NDEs?
I think
And
so.
each time he went back, he was like, "Okay, I was good. I was better or different for a little bit, but it didn't quite take." And then it happened again. And each time, I think it was with lightning, but I could be wrong. But that last time, he said that one got him, and it was the
Yeah.
smallest things that put him over the
Third
fence.
time's the charm.
Yeah, yeah, and it was the smallest things. Again, the little things. And they say the little things that matter. But as I get older, it's so true. If you're living your life trying to keep up with somebody else or trying to impress somebody else or something like that, I highly recommend you
And I've
reconsider
heard
that
that said.
because
If you had multiple lifetimes,
yeah,
you live one for your parents, they're good people. You live one for your family. You live one for the neighbors, they're good neighbors. But in reality, you've got to go and live your life for you because that's the only one you're going to get.
right. But live your life for you, knowing it does affect other people.
Right.
And also understand that sometimes I think some things that make us uncomfortable, like look, in America, we just had Thanksgiving, and a lot of people, we've made fun of it, and we've laughed, and we've seen multiple movies and books and stories, and had our own about meeting up and sitting around a room full of people we're related to. and their friends and their extended family. And it's always like people roll their eyes. I'm like, oh man, I got to deal with Aunt Sally, and I got to go, oh my gosh, Uncle Bob's going to go off on this, you know. And again, we'd miss it if we didn't have it, but we have this anxiety build up about it because, again, we're forcing our vibration around people that we're not vibrating on the same vibration with. See what I
Right.
mean? And that's the thing that makes you start to feel that. It's like you're almost forcing yourself to exist in an environment that you're having a very difficult time existing in. And I think a lot of people feel nervous about that. I think that's when we have our little groups like our tribe or our friends and things like that, you get with them, you start feeling better because you're all kind of into like the same type of stuff. You have some kind of similar interests or backgrounds or memories with each other, and you feel a little bit more loose and a little bit more you. And that's a different vibration. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good vibration, but it's the same you're vibrating on. That's the same with ghosts. And they're going to gravitate to an energy that they are familiar with. So if they're depressed, they're going to connect in with that depression. It's like you and I have talked multiple times about stuff like this, Steve, and you've had out of nowhere strangers attached to you, knowing for whatever reason you we're assuming why you, okay, you're just walking by and all of a sudden that ghost attached to you
And I've had
for
the living
whatever
do
reason.
that too. I've been on a train, a commuter train in Portland, and have some random person just come up, sit down right next to me, and start telling me their life story. I've been
Mhm.
told I have that father slash confessor figure vibe, and people feel like they can talk to me about anything, and they do. And it's
Yep.
the same way with those
It
from
goes.
the afterlife.
Yep. And why would it be different? They're human
Yeah.
beings. That's the thing. And I am so grateful that when I was searching at a young age, and I've told you this story multiple times, but it's very similar situation you and I have, and just where we had to search through books and encyclopedias and, Ripley's Believe It or Not and Fate magazine and hope to heaven there was a special on TV or a sightings or something, and an old TV show just to try to sort what was going on. And we knew there was a lot going on, and we were trying to get answers. And it wasn't, you couldn't just turn on the computer and start searching the internet, And I found in an old used bookstore, and I'd gone through countless libraries and, of course, read all the books on the occult and supernatural and those Salem witches and the whole, what was available. And I found Hans Holzer. And when I read that phrase, I've never been afraid of ghosts. They're just people in need of help. It burnt into my
Yeah.
psyche. And I was on that quest ever since. It gave me a good foundation to build on. They're just people. They're people in need of help. If I was you know what I mean? If I was a person nowadays, you could say, would you ignore somebody walking down the street needing help? Well, I could say right now in the generations we're living in, yeah, everybody just pull out their phone, take a video of it. But back in the day, of course, nobody could walk down the middle of Main Street in need of some kind of assistance. And, 25 people come out of the storefronts to help that one individual. We've kind of lost that. But I think we're kind of searching again for that, even without knowing it, as paranormal investigators, because you're really going in to help a person, whether you're helping the people in the home or whether you're helping the dead. They're people. And again, yeah, you're trying to get evidence, you're trying to prove what of course you're trying to say, hey, look what we found. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course we want to try to prove it. The disappointing part is when you put it out there, everybody's going to think it's fake because we're capable of doing that kind of fakery. It again, it didn't change any time in the spiritual movement back in the 1890s and early 1900s, when photography was just barely a babe, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Certainly compared to now. They were still saying fakery and charlatans, and of course there was many. But in and among them all were the truth tellers and the people with the real abilities and the people that would tell you Uncle Bob's just fine. He says he loves the new blue dress you just bought, and he saw you dancing at the prom. He's real proud of you. There were still those people throughout time, whether you called them oracles or fortune tellers or whatever. We've all been called all the names, you know, and you're always going to have that person that sits there and I don't believe in this, until you see it. And maybe you're not meant to see it. Maybe in this lifetime, whatever your soul's story is, maybe in this lifetime, you're not meant to be blessed with that knowledge,
That's
you
a
know?
good way to put it.
Yeah, because maybe you're just a bitter old dill pickle and you need to just stew in your own vinegar for a while, and your soul needs to go something else on this journey. Maybe next time around you'll be able to be allowed to see some of the magic because it's beautiful. It could be ugly too. It could be some scary, dark, nasty stuff. There's no doubt about it. But I know what beats it. So once you have the key to the box, man, it's like okay, you know it's just it's a comforting knowledge. It doesn't mean that no bad things can happen. It's about the what wins the ultimate battle, and love and kindness and all of that. The light, love is eternal. That beats everything. There's your major poker hand right there.
Yeah, that's the takeaway.
Yep. And it's true, and that's the whole reason the book you and I wrote together. And if you listeners don't know, Steve Stockton has written a mighty bunch of books, and he had a bunch before I met him, you know. And then he came along, and he was convinced me to write one, and I said, "Well, you're coming with me." And the way we did it is the way we're having this conversation right now. I would put down my experience and what I thought about it and tried to give my honest assessment on what I thought. In some cases, some of my favorites were the ones where I got to say, at the time, I thought it was this. As I grew up and I learned a little bit more, I thought, okay, it was that, but it had more to it. And
Yeah.
then as my consciousness raised and I started to really get some understanding on it, I look back and go, whoa, that was a whole lot more than I thought it was. It was that, but a whole lot more, because again, everything is, it's a whole lot more, that thought you had. You're in the car and you think you're just, well, I'm going to tell her. Don't think I hadn't done it. I'm a daughter of thunder. So in case y'all didn't know, I'm a Jersey redhead. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I was raised two boys by myself, uphill both ways, barefoot. You know, Never lost the shine of my sword. Just saying. So, so so when I tell you that, I've had to come down and calm down, because here's the thing. I have been told by multiple people that are, medium psychics, whatever, name your ability, that in many lifetimes I've been a soldier. So I believe in this time I had to fight that natural ability. Not that there's anything wrong with being a warrior, but it seemed like my soul needed to come in and find a softer side this time. And the way the universe conducted that, it was like I can look back now and see it plain as day, like a painting,
Yep.
and it conducted it like an orchestra. It was beautiful. And I look back and I go, wow. Because my mind, my DNA memory, whatever you want to call it, my actually almost like bloodline memory, my soul remembered, whether even though I didn't, that soldier was where I wanted to be. I was all in. Trust me, you never met a more hardcore chick in your life. And I was trained by airborne rangers. I was dating one, so they put me through all kinds of, training. And I mean, I was ready when I got in. Let me tell you something. I was so ready. I was reading a book. I was so hardcore. It was so funny. And, I'm proud of it. I was a good soldier. But the thing about it is how much our soul does. Remember how we slip into things, whether it's playing piano or, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And this was mine because I had been a warrior in so many lifetimes. And I was so into it. I remember on the bus going to Fort Dix for basic training, I was reading a book called The Drill Sergeant about basic training. I couldn't wait. I couldn't stop smiling. I could not stop smiling. I was all in. And I was told that when your bus pulls up into the things, this is what's going to happen. It's going to pull up. There's about four to six drill sergeants standing outside. They're going to open up, and they're going to be real nice at first. And they're going to come in and then they're going to start yelling and screaming until you got 30 seconds to get off your bus. They're going to push you and knock you down and anything else. And don't be rattled by it. Don't be rattled by it. And they told me exactly what to do. So I just stood up real calm, and I calmly moved past everybody in the back of the bus. It was an old school bus. Moved calmly past to the back of the bus, past everybody and all the chaos, kicked open the emergency door, threw out my duffel bag, and then went and stood in formation around the side of the bus. Man, did I get ripped. But I was this is my territory. This is what you're dealing with. You know what I mean? It's like, and I couldn't stop smiling. They kept yelling and screaming at me and dropping me and making me do push-ups and all kinds of stuff, but I was in my glory. It was easy for me. It was because my soul remembered. So don't think that your soul doesn't have memories. If you're really drawn to something, horseback riding or painting or whatever it may be, go with it because it's probably your soul memory. If it feels like, you know what I mean? If it does
Yeah,
some rejuvenating, I say, absolutely, as long as it's legal, do it. You
yeah,
know, go,
there you go.
I want to be, I said, before I leave, I'd love to be blacksmithing again. I don't know why all of a sudden you know what I mean? All my whole life, actually, not all of a sudden. But anyway, the story is that I was going to be a soldier. I was never getting married. Look, I have this wild past, but I had reasons to be this hard on what I had decided. I wasn't going to get married. I wasn't going to have kids. I had many sisters and they all went through turmoil. And I was just, man, it was hard. And the universe went, nope. And before you know it, I mean, I met a guy, I got married. I married a biker, 1%, a soldier in the army. I was like, I love a challenge, babe.
There you
So
go.
love a chance, loved him dearly. Anyway, so he actually was an old retired dude. So he wasn't active in it, but he was still the personality. So anyway, it's just I just picked the hard road, the road less traveled. Hell, I took where's the damaged road? I want to ride that one on flat tires and no gas and a low gas tank. So and throw some fire up in there or something. So anyway, as life goes on, I had this whole thing patterned out, and as they say, God laughs when you make plans, right? So I'm doing great as a soldier. There's nothing wrong there. It's everything else got involved. So here I am, not planning on ever having kids, and I find out that I got pregnant and didn't know it. I didn't know it till after I lost it because I was doing all this crazy acrobatics and stuff. I mean, I was flipping upside down, climbing stuff, falling up, jumping out of things. I was doing all kinds of stuff. And it made me do something, Steve. It made me go, "What?" You know what I mean? Something kicked off in me in my motherhood that I didn't even know existed that had been that natural, like kind of dormant. You know what I mean? I pushed down, so life had pushed down so far, my choices and everything, and the way I felt that woke wide up. And then I was like different. And then they did it again. And then they did it again. Yeah, I was married but I was, gone a lot. You go away and you're, out in the field, you're doing all the things. And it changed me by using things that were completely natural for human being and honed me almost like big hands sculpting clay and said, no, you're going to be like this, but you're going to take everything with you that you learned by being all these things. See? And then you're going to be the person you are and your character you are now. It's very much like that broken cup we were talking about the other night, Steve. That beautiful, I believe it's a Japanese tradition where they something breaks and they put it back together and then they put gold in the cracks, and now
Yeah.
it's more valuable and more and stronger and more beautiful because it had gone through the things that broke them, but became different and better. You know, and it's just amazing how the universe works. But if you take the story I just told you and you think about DNA memory and why we might be doing things. Now, those could be good things. Those could be things we're attracted to, but I think it could also be, Steve, it could also be the bad things too. Addictions, abuse, being that person. And they say break the cycle, break the circle, stop it. Be aware of it and just by all means end it. Break it there, let it die with you if it's bad, make it stop.
Hmm.
And that's what ghosts do too, especially the ones that have crossed over and come back and are trying to help others. It's an amazing thing to me. And people are missing that. And some of these people we were talking earlier that sit there, that's what I mean. You don't get to see the magic. Your whatever's going on in you is blocking, you know, and that happens on a scale too when people are saying why don't I ever see why doesn't that person visit why doesn't whatever why can't I get a reading why can't I because you're blocking it a lot of times you are
Yeah,
you
you
know
can block things, including blessings, away
yep
from yourself. You can keep the good stuff and the bad away.
yeah 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 Steve, true. You know, and how many times have you and I talked, honey, about spelling? Well, what do you think spelling is?
Yep.
What do you think spelling is? What do you think, you know, words have meaning, words have strength. We're told that we are responsible for our own thoughts. Of course
Well,
we are.
the
And
Bible
thoughts,
tells you that you have the power of life and death in your tongue. You can have what you speak to yourself.
manifestation, you sure can. And that's a lot where you and I have spoken on the death experience, and whether or not you see the tunnel, or whether or not you do this or that or that. It all has to do, and not so much with your belief, but where you are, where you're vibrating, what your consciousness is, and what your beliefs are for sure, what you're comfortable with. Very much that's the same with ghosts. They sometimes they appear to you the way that they know you personally will recognize them the most, be most comfortable with,
Yeah,
you
no, that
know?
makes perfect sense.
And they might appear as a young child because they want you to know, you know, um, people have lost young children and they come back, well, he's like 10 on the other side, you know, or he'll come as a grown guy. It's like, I was here all along. I reincarnated and we've been together like 5 lives, whatever it may be. There's so many different things, but again, they're all happening at the same time, you know? And, again, there's so many things that are absolute wonderment about this subject. And, again, we talk about magic, especially around the holidays. We talk about, where's all the magic? Where's all the glitter and stuff? Honey, maybe you're blocking it.
It's there. You just have to look for
If you're
it, and
walking
you can
past,
look away from it too.
yeah. If you're walking by a rose bush and you don't take in that beautiful scent, if you're, like when they say stop and smell the roses, if you can walk past a bird feeder, a beautiful cardinal on a bird feeder for a moment or on a branch, and you can't accept its beauty, and that right there, it's like if you don't believe in a higher power, when you see the way our world works, when we leave it alone, it does just fine. We go messing with nature and we start mucking around with it, we're messing it around. They're doing just fine. The
Yeah.
raccoons, they're evolving to learn how to open gates. They'll be driving cars probably in about 5 years.
Oh, they've got a
Because
Tesla. They don't even have to know how to drive. They just
yeah,
know how to open the door.
but we've made them evolve. We've made, bears move, and things change territory. Gosh, they did it to, look how many indigenous tribes got moved off of different lands,
Yeah,
and had to
that's a
had
good
to
example.
relearn and revamp and change and evolve, and for better or worse, in a lot of cases worse, into extinction in some cases. But when nature's left alone, it's a beautiful balance of one miracle after the other, you know. And I think we've gotten away from that. We want the flash and the thing on TV and the newest thing and the expensive that and the smallest watch and the biggest phone and the smallest phone and it's how much technology have we seen come and go in our lifetime, Steve?
Yeah, really.
Good Lord.
And it's always something different. For a while there, it was the biggest phone, then the
Uh-huh.
smallest phone.
Yep.
Now I
Yep.
think it's the biggest phone again. It keeps switching up, but you've got to have whatever the latest and the greatest is if you're going to be one of the cool kids.
I've been gray manning it all my life, man. I caught on in 8 tracks. I'm gonna go, hold on a minute. It's like
Yeah,
tap the
keep
brakes here.
switching those
I just
formats.
spent all my money on that stuff, and now you're telling me I got to get those? What do you mean that's only going to be available on a cassette? Now I got to buy a cassette player. Now I got to buy, and you go from 45s to albums to, gosh, my mom had them back. It was 33 and a third and 78. Those things were so thick, you wouldn't believe it. They're like garbage can lids, those things, so
Yeah,
thick,
the old acetates, and
but the
one
records, the
wrong
way
move,
everything
and it was
changes.
chipped or broken or cracked
Yep.
or otherwise messed up, and there
Yep.
you went. It'd skip, it'd crackle, it'd make noise, but God, I love it. Everything now with the digital stuff, it's too pure and too
Yep.
sterile. There needs to be that hiss, that pop and
Tell you
crack of
what,
the
dude.
needle. That's where we grew up. That's what we're used to.
Two of the most beautiful sounds from my high school days were the sound of a needle dropping on the beginning of an album
Yeah.
and the
Or that
sound of a
ka-chunk
Zippo
on
lighter.
the 8-track
Open it
player
up.
when you knew what that next track was gonna be, and that's the one you were waiting on.
Yep, yep, yep. I can't tell you how many nights I spent laying on the floor with a pillow in between two speakers and you know, goodness. It's just the music is another magical thing. It can also be very good or very evil, I think. You
Yeah.
know, because it can change your vibration that way. I mean, plants prove that. What was that experiment where they'd yell and scream at one plant, play it, metal music, and the other one they'd play classical and tell them how much they loved it, and it blossomed and bloomed. The other one died. I mean,
Yep.
that's us. That's us. I
I
mean,
believe in
if it can kill a plant, what do you think it's doing to you? You know,
that. Exactly.
think about it. Same thing. I mean, we need love. We need encouragement. We need to do that. And if we're not getting it from other people, then give it in spite of the crap. Because that's what I'm telling you, what the dead are dying to tell us is that love is eternal, that enjoy the journey. This is school, Yeah, some of it's going to be bad. You bet it's going to be bad. And all those little things that we thought were just silly little sayings, they have a lot of truth to them. If it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, you
Yep.
know all those little things, again, I once had a talk with an elder. We were talking about healing, and how much I loved being able to tell, if you just listen to me, I'll get you through it, you know but you got to listen to me. I'll put up with the whining and the crying and all the bitching. Just drink the damn shit. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna heal you, and move your leg. I'm telling you, I'm gonna get you up and walking. And the ones that listen, they will. You know what I mean? They'll do it.
Right.
But then you got those people just want to. How many people do we know that just want to complain about something but never do anything different to change it? They
Yeah.
just want to. They just want
Then
to
they
bitch
wouldn't have
about it.
anything to complain about, and they wouldn't be happy.
They're emotional hamsters on a wheel. They just want to go around and around. They don't want to fix it. I don't. It sounds cold and cruel, but as a person that goes around and tries to help people in a natural way, give them natural alternatives, whether because of economics, because they can't afford other stuff, or changing diet, or you know what I'm saying. We're only allowed to tell them, look, I'm telling you again that if you do this, this, and this is going to make a difference. Give it a try. You know, we're only allowed to do that 3 times. 3 times, because the first time you're planting seed, second time you're watering it, the third time you're standing there, you know what I'm saying? And you're going, look,
Mhm.
you got to want to grow, you know. But it's like, I'm here one last time, and that's kind of the way you do with. I find the kind of way you do with ghosts too. It's like, look, this is free will. Your choices are your own. You're responsible for your choices. Wherever you make those choices, some of the best lessons I ever learned were making bad choices,
Yeah. Some
bad
things,
judgment.
that's the only way you can learn them is the hard way.
Those things, woo, those things will teach you quick, you know, and they're going to harden you up, and but you got to get through them, and you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, because then you're just again an emotional hamster on a wheel. You're just going around and around and around and around and around and around, and repeat the same things and wondering why nothing is working. And try something different. Try being in the light, and that's what we have to tell the ghosts. But you also have to leave them with 3 times. Say, look, I'm going to explain this to you. You can leave here. Well, I don't want to leave. I don't want to see my wife and all this. Nope, you don't understand. When you get over there, none of that's going to matter. None of it's going to matter. You're going to see why you did all those things with your wife, and she's going to be there, and she's going to be telling you, yep, it did hurt me, but I forgive you because we went through this for a reason. That kind of thing. Well, I just don't want to, like, look at that young man that we helped cross Cool Breeze. He didn't want
Yeah.
to go over there because he didn't want to face his mom.
Yeah. He did. He was ashamed of what he had done and how she was going to react,
Hmm. Hmm. And you kind
or
of,
how he perceived that she would react. I don't think she took him by the ear and drug him off. I think she took him by the hand and said,
yep.
"Son, I'm glad to see you. Welcome to the other side."
All it took was a connect. That, excuse me. Sorry about that. All it took was that connection into the light, into the love, and it starts to melt away. It's almost like those old little cartoons you saw where somebody was just so mean and so cruel and so icy that they almost became like ice until something love light came in and started to melt it down.
Yeah.
Very similar to that. Why don't you tell a little bit of that? I'm sure your listeners like to hear that. Maybe we can give the condensed version of Cool Breeze. I think that's
Cool
one
breeze.
of the most
Yeah.
interesting supernatural stories ever.
I kept having these reoccurring dreams that I was in a place that I didn't recognize, and I was on the edge of a river, and I could see buildings and factories and things off in the distance. But here off to the side, like it had run out of the road on the edge of the river there was a motorcycle, and the dirt there was shale, and it had covered it up. I think a little bit of the gas tank and maybe the headlight and one of the handlebars was all I could see. And I kept seeing this, and then I would walk past it in the dream, and each time I kept getting closer to this tree, and then I finally realized, well, I don't want to go up to that tree because there's a body under there. Whoever wrecked this motorcycle crawled up the bank and went under that tree. It was a low hanging cedar, and I thought there's going to be a body under there, and sure enough, there was. I got a little bit closer each time I dreamed the dream. I could see the boots, then I could see the jeans, and then I didn't want to see the whole thing because I knew it was desiccated. It'd been there a while. And then the thing starts talking to me, tell me that you got to help me. You got to do something. You got to get me out of here. And I came to you and I said, Cisco, I think I know where there's a body. And we thought at first we were looking for a body, but we weren't. We were trying to find somebody to help this guy get out of his predicament there where he had passed on and be able to go over to the other side. And you went to one of your mediums, and the first thing she said, that you hadn't even explained it to her, she looked up at you and said, forget about the motorcycle, because we were looking for a motorcycle. I was going out and looking at, we narrowed it down. It was a certain type of Kawasaki in a certain color that was only offered 1 year, something like that. It was pretty specific.
Orange and cream, like a creamsicle. It was orange and cream and chrome.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it didn't have anything to do with the motorcycle.
Right.
And just we kind of took it from there. And with the help of these people that you connected through, we solved that. And he started leaving me alone, and then started talking to these people that you knew, and they got him crossed over. And that's what it was. He had passed on. He was a 1%er, kind of a rough guy, and he had done some things he was kind of ashamed of, and he didn't know what his mother was going to think about that when he got over to the other side. So therefore, he was afraid to cross over because he didn't know what would await and how she would react to these things that he had done. But in the end, it was a mother's love. Instead of taking him by the ear and telling him how ashamed she was, she took him by the arm and they walked off into the light, and with her welcoming him to the other side. A mother's love, like I said, love never dies, but especially I think a mother's love never dies.
True. Oh, so true. And that connection is so strong too, because I mean, how many different reincarnation stories have we heard where the child come through and said, I picked you. I picked my parents. I picked you. And, and that's, again, that's just an amazing thing. But again, another little piece in that puzzle and another little marble in the jar or something for reincarnation, and also soul families that actually pick what they're going to do to come back to help each other through this whatever life they choose to reincarnate back to, and kind of come in as a group. It might be a friend or a father or a cousin or a neighbor, whatever, a coworker. You don't know where they're going to pop up or how big, via time and impact on your life they're going to have. It could be something short, short and sweet. It's like that, 5 people meet in heaven. But before I tell you about that, Mr. Cool Breeze, one of the cool things about it, listeners, this is one of those stories that are just like so unbelievably amazing, because from Steve's first phone call, first of all, I have friends that call me and I get phone calls from, and they open up with, Cisco, I think I know where a body is. And I'm like, Steve, okay, I'm listening. Am I going to need a shovel? Either way, it's like, and he's states and states and states away. But I know to listen when Steve and I talk about cases and stuff.
Yeah, I think at that time I was in Oregon or maybe Washington State. I was literally on the other side of the country.
Yeah, you were completely as far as you get without getting your butt wet.
Yeah,
both of us, because I'm on the opposite end as far as I can go, just about. So, anyhow, I'm listening, and as he's speaking, I'm trying to, read your energy, and because you're talking about him, a little bit of him's coming through, because that's just the way it works. And because he's basically giving you permission by showing up in your dreams and asking you for help to connect in, so you bring a little bit of that with, and as you're telling the story, I'm picking up, I'm not sure what we're supposed to do here, but it's something, and we're running out of time, because as Steve is having these dreams, you had set quite a few. He would show up and be more, the whole scene not just him, would be more decomposed, more going away, more we're running out of time, kind of timeline ticking kind of thing. You know, if anybody's ever seen American Werewolf in London,
Yeah, yeah, it
the
was
friend
very
that would
similar to
show up,
that.
yeah,
Every time there was I saw a little more of him, and he was already in bad shape, and he was getting worse.
yeah,
And toward the end, it was like literally a skeleton with a little bit of the sinew and stuff left on it, and the clothes, the jeans, the leathers that he was wearing, the vest, all that, it was rotting away. And
yeah,
it was frightening just to see this thing under
yeah,
a tree, or to peek under a limb and see this body where it had passed on under there, and then just returning to the earth. And
yeah,
he was wanting me to help him. And why me? I have no idea, other than that
uh-huh,
I listened to him and was
uh-huh,
able to find him some help. And I
uh-huh.
think I never was a hardcore one percenter, but I used to ride Harleys. And I think he picked up on that and thought, well,
What was
you know,
that? It's,
here's a
you
guy
were your
out there
energy.
that has this energy. He can hear me.
Mhm.
I can visit him in these dreams,
Saw your light.
and he will listen to me because he's kind of been where I've been. Some like I said, I
Mhm,
wasn't a
mhm.
hardcore
And the most
biker, but I
interesting
was
thing,
a daily
Steve,
rider.
is we don't know where he connected into you. Again, this is such a learning story because we have to think of where did he connect you. You could have picked him up in the diner. He could have just been walking, or and we just don't know. Come through a portal, come through just anything, because there doesn't have to be. Okay, Steve's living in his house, and the guy used to live there and died there. You don't have to have all those pinpointed connections. It could be a
Yeah,
wisp of an
he
energy.
saw a sliver of
Yes,
a place to wiggle in there, and
yes,
he came
yes,
in, and then
yes,
there we went. And
yep.
he knew that if I couldn't help him, that I would know somebody that did, and I
That's
did. I
it.
talked to you, and you knew somebody,
Right,
and your somebody's knew somebody, and
right.
it was a group effort. But
Yep.
we got done what needed to be done through all of us played our part there.
And that's it. And that's the way life works. Now here you've got the dead and the living working together. This is a perfect situation. And it's also a great situation to show how everything is multi-leveled. It's not one thing. It's multi-leveled. And it's also not just he connected into your energy, but there's spirit guides involved here. Yours, his, mine, theirs, everybody was involved, and they're working together. It's almost like we have free will to make the choices to help or not to help, but you know, they'll nudge a little bit, and they'll give him like maybe a connection. And, it's like tap on the shoulder, hey, a squirrel, and he sees you. He connects into you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's like he connects into you. There's a little light there, so he kind of like wills himself to it. And I think just by thinking and connecting, you show up.
yeah, and I
This
think
is why.
he tried other people. He tried getting
Yeah,
other people's attention, and
yeah.
they were either scared to death, like I almost was, or they
Hmm.
didn't listen to him, or they didn't know how to help.
Hmm.
I think I was a last resort, and I don't know that there's a time limit on things like that. Maybe he was just tired of waiting, but there was an
Yeah.
urgency to
That
the
was his
situation.
manifestation, like, maybe he thought he was running out of time, I'm running out of time, running out. That was almost him manifesting his anxiety of that onto
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
And I'm running out of time, running out of time, I need help, because it was so powerful in the beginning. When you saw the bike, and then the next dream it was getting a little more covered up with dirt, and the next dream it was a little more covered up with dirt, and a little more and a little more, and you were feeling the anxiety and picking it up also as an empath.
yeah.
And we're looking at maps, remember, trying to find, okay, you saw a fireplace that was almost looked like it
It
was
was a
in
chimney, like, from a factory, but it
a
was made out of
factory.
red brick,
Right,
and,
right.
the shale, and I could see the river, and I could see some kind of buildings and things over there. If I'd found it
We're
on
trying
Google
to Google
Maps, I would
Earth
have
it.
recognized it, but, that could be a lot of different places in the country. I
Right.
don't know that we even got close to where it was.
No. But we were also thinking about, the terrain and stuff like that. We were looking at, I mean, believe me, folks, we were doing it all, but that was like the first 3, 4 days. This is where we were, and we're trying to focus on everything from looking up the model of the bike, trying to see if anybody was missing, if it ever came up in newspapers with the bike, um, of that description, or a person with that, just trying every angle you could, until at one point, I think it was the third phone call, Steve, maybe fourth phone call. You and I, and I think this is important to share with the listeners, because it really, if you think about paranormal cases like this, you're really going to go far. We were starting to think. And for just a second, I sat and I stopped and I just meditated on it. And I asked the guides, I said, where do you need us to go with this? And that's when we said, tap the brakes. We're not looking for the bike. We're not looking for a body. It's not a murder. This is what it is. And he would not talk to women. He would only talk to Steve. This was part of it. He would only like Steve was like the translator at this point. You were getting ready to take that role, and you were kind of like the in between the UN or something. So
Yeah.
now he's still under the tree, and everything, as soon as we calmed down, he started to calm down a little bit, and I started sending out energy, and he starts connecting with me. Like, I turn on the radio, and the first song on the radio was They Call Me the Breeze, which is why we
Yeah,
call him
and
the
that's
Breeze.
Hank Cool Breeze.
Yeah,
And then the person that you talked to had get you to let me open up so she could read my energy so she could read
exactly.
this guy because she couldn't read him. He was blocking everybody else off at that point
Exactly.
except for me. So it
Yeah.
was a real
Yeah.
roundabout way of getting there,
Yeah.
but
So
we went full circle with it.
yeah, he's tapping into me. I'm going to the store, I think, like 3 or 4 times. They call me the Breeze. Would come on in a store or something else, and I'm okay, because we were asking him what his name was, because I wanted to get personal and start using familiar words with him. Even if he wasn't listening to me, I know he could hear me. He just wasn't responding to me. He had to do it through you. So we took that for a couple of days, and then as it turned out, I was doing a psychic fair, which is something I'd helped a friend out a lot with. It was a nice big one, like 30 different psychics and tables and tarot card readers and crystals and this and that and dream catchers. Is a lovely place. Drum circle stuff. So there was going to be a bunch of mediums and psychics and people like that doing readings. And I walked in and I said, you know what? I'm going to put down for a reading. And the girl at the desk was a friend of mine and said, well, who do you want? I'll put you on the waiting list. I said, no, just give me the next one that's open. I'm going to let the guides pick it. So it turned out to be somebody I knew, and I knew most of them, but I knew this one pretty well, and I knew she was spot on. And I didn't say a word to anybody. I walked in now, that Steve said I have to get Steve's permission to be able to read his energy. So it's basically like I'm carrying his energy with me in my purse, you know, and I go sit down. Just imagine it like that. And I go sit down in front of my friend, and of course she's like, "Oh, Cisco, how you doing, baby?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm great, love. How you doing? How you been?" She goes, "Oh, and I kind of smiled. I said, "Well, I don't want to say too much because I said I'm carrying somebody else's energy." She goes, "Oh, I understand." She goes, "So you're here for a reading?" And I said, "Well, yeah, for not for me, but for them." And she goes, "Okay, cool." She goes, "Wait a second." She goes, "Let me set up." And that's how quick we do stuff, guys. It's just all this BS stuff. So when they're good, they're good. They're just on. And she sits, and so she's focusing in. She goes, "Ooh," and I'm like, "Yeah." And this is the kind of conversation we have. And this is exactly how it went down. And she's looking at me again, and she's looking at my eyes, and she goes, "Okay, I got it." And she goes, "Oh," she goes, "Yeah, he won't talk to women." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And she goes, "Okay." And she
Now,
goes,
was
"Wait
she
a
the
minute."
one that told you to forget about the motorcycle?
Right, right. That's the next thing she said. She goes, "He's not going to talk to women." I go, "Yeah, I know, babe. Keep going." And she says, "Okay, wait a minute." And she got quiet for a minute. She's really digging in now, and I know she's connected in. And she just leaned back and looked at me. She goes, "Well," and she slaps the table. She goes, "I'll tell you one thing." She says, "Quit looking for the bike. It's not about the bike." And I just went, "Okay, talk to me, honey." You know, and she started telling me. So what we did, the fast part about this is really quite amazing. Is I connected with her. She's a wonderful, wonderful medium. And her and I decided and became in agreement with helping this young man. And I had to get one other person to agree on it. And she was in another place. She's in another state. So now you've got, I don't know how many different states involved. That doesn't matter. It's all about intent, guys. And so we all had to do an agreement. And because he wouldn't talk to women, he would now, but see, something else happens, Steve, that we don't usually point out. But right then, when everybody's in agreement and we're doing our thing, and that we called you and told you what was going on, and we didn't want to, so just trust us. You'll know. Just go to sleep, and we're gonna ask your guides to bring him in. Blah blah blah, and we're gonna handle the rest. But we got to go. Steve's translating. This is crazy. But right about then, Steve, what did he do? He started coming out from underneath the tree, and now he's standing next to you. or
Yeah.
behind you. Remember
It
that?
was behind me, kinda over my shoulder,
Yep,
and I was afraid to turn around and look at him in the dream or the vision or whatever it was because I knew it was a corpse standing
yep.
there. And I mean, it
But
was
we got
scary
him.
enough under the tree because the branches obscured a lot of it, but now he's out from under there
Yep,
and he's behind me. And I told you that, and you said, "That's good.
yep,
He's out from under the tree.
yep.
He's out of his safe space. He
We
wants us
drug
to
him out
do
from under
this
that damn
and get
tree.
him the help that he's looking for." We
Basically,
coaxed him out.
basically, well, you forgot the women you were dealing with now. You got you got me and you got my other two friends in different states now. Keep this in mind, folks. This is an amazing thing. We all basically grabbed him by the ankles, pulled him out from under that tree. So you're not going to talk to us. You can at least look at us. Get up and walk. Come on, get out from under that tree, you big old bad boy. You know what I mean? Show us
Yep.
how. Show us how to. We got him out from underneath the tree. And he came out, and now he's like standing behind Steve, and he's talking to Steve. So basically, that's how he was right up to the end. We kept working on him, and he was just so stubborn about it, but we were easing him through it. And Steve was doing his own thing, and basically, look, man, you got to forgive yourself for these things. It doesn't matter over there. You're not going to be judged. You're going to look at what you did, and then you're going to see why it happened and what you learned from it and things like this. We're telling him like it is. We're laying it down because this is the kind of guy you're not going to lie to. He's going to see through lies. We're telling him the truth, but we're adamant about it. That's basically what we're doing because that's the character you're dealing with. You just tell the truth, no lies, no bullshit, right? And
Yep.
it was working. It was working. But it got right up to that point. It was like, nah, you know, because some of the hardest ones, you know what I mean? The tough ones are they're really soft inside. They've worked up a hard exterior through their life, but they're very soft inside, a lot of them. And that's when I looked at my friend and I said, "That's it. I'm getting his mother." And she said, "Yep, agreed. Let's
Yep.
go." Now they had the ability to go do that, go talk to their spirit guides to go find his mom and to just stand in the light. That's all you got to do. Now, the best part about this story, and it's the best finish you've ever heard, Steve had no idea we were doing that. As I said, we're in different states and we didn't want to drag him through everything. He had his own things he had to do with this gentleman. Okay. As Steve is sleeping, Steve, tell the dream you had that you knew nothing about what I just said. And you had the dream the
I
same
saw
time we
the
were doing
guy,
this.
and now this time he was whole. He was back in like a corporal form, but he was still ethereal, and he was walking away. And there was a little old lady that had him by the arm, and they just walked off into this just wonderful golden sunset, and he faded out of sight. And I never dreamed about him again.
That was it. It was done. It was
And I
done.
and I told you, and I didn't even know that you'd
Yep.
gotten the mother involved
Mhm.
because we'd finally got that out of him that was the problem,
Yep.
that he'd done some things that
He didn't
he
want to face his
wasn't
mother and his
exactly
sister.
proud of, and he didn't want his mother or sister to know about it.
Mhm, mhm. Isn't that incredible? And he had no idea that we had done that because we had made we had all agreed what all our parts were, and we went off and we played them. We did them well and to the best of our ability with the help of the guides and his guides, because you're never alone in this, folks. I shared a picture. It's a beautiful story, it really is. But I shared a picture this Thanksgiving, and somebody had shared on one of the social medias, whatever. There's a big dinner table, and all around the dinner table was like several layers of ghost figures of past people who were also there with whoever they came with. And they were visiting because they knew each other. That's how it is, folks. That's how it is. It happens over there, it happens here, you know. People get scared and go, "Oh man, do they watch me in the shower and this stuff?" They don't have time for that. It's not like that. It's one, they're vibrating on a much higher level, or they're not. And if they're not, they're getting fixed and they're getting help. You see what I'm saying? It's not like you don't throw a soul away. It goes through a healing. It goes through a, okay, do you understand why this was a bad thing you did? Or you starting to understand now. Could you have done it better? How else could you have done it? Now that you know. And this is what we go through. And I believe it's all for the ultimate trying to achieve to vibrate at the highest level we can vibrate at, and that is in love and light and understanding and forgiveness and forgiving yourself, you know, is like the number one, I think. And once
Yeah,
you
and
can do
and that
that,
was the takeaway. All this time he'd spent there, literally rotting away under that tree and worrying anxiety, his mother's just like, "Oh, you big baby, come on. I'm don't care about all that stuff. Come with me. Let's go over here." And that was it. That whole episode that went on, it went on for months, and then that was just the end of it. And that, of course, he didn't know it, but that could have been the situation from the beginning. If he just went into the light, his mother had already passed. She was waiting there for him. She didn't care what he had done. She was just glad to be reunited
Right,
with him in the afterlife.
right. But she knew it. She knew everything he had done. She probably cried with him and just like, "Oh, honey, don't make that choice. Oh, this isn't going to be good. Oh, gosh." But isn't that the same thing we do here on Earth? One of the
Yeah,
hardest things I had to
indeed.
do is my poor, my mother who had passed in 1976 came through a medium and told me, all that stuff that your sons are going through, you can't do nothing about it. All those tools you got through life and those hats that you put on and those things that you go in and fix and change. Nope. Sit down. They got to go through it. They got to finish it. It's not, you love them through it. And that's the best lesson you could ever get. You got to love each other through it. If we, even the jerks, it's like a couple of different people I know are just so wise. I love them so much. They tell you little tidbits and you try to keep those puzzle pieces for your picture, so that you're trying to put this picture together and you just cherish each one of these pieces. But, they told me that is like the number one thing that the dead come over and say to again, like, "I'm okay, I love you, love is eternal," you know but it's also knowing that we've got to go through these things. We've got to go through stuff like we said at the beginning of the show. But if you can go through the hard stuff and still see, enjoy, and appreciate the magic, boy, you are, oh gosh,
Yeah, and we all learned from we all
you're
took something away. He helped
new,
all of us
you're on the right
as
track.
we were helping him. It was an amazing thing. One of the coolest things I've ever been a part of in the spirit realm.
Mhm, mhm. Yep. And there's like what, five strangers helping a stranger that, we probably would have, and any one of us, probably, wouldn't have, might have been scared of him in real life. You know what I mean? If he was walking down a dark street coming one way and you was walking up it the other way, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I would have crossed
And
the
here
street
we went through
probably.
so much. And we went through so much to, none of that mattered. It was just, um, it was a human being, like Hans Holzer said, a human being in need of help. And how many do we pass in every day we're in? And I was saying about the office, a lot of these people, another drop of wisdom is that, say you're in a place and there's this antagonizer just gets under your skin and makes you, oh, they make me crazy. Oh, they make me want to do this or, and we know that the universe or the spirit guides or what, even you and your higher self, part of you maybe that's left over there that's helping your spirit guides guide you so you can do it better this time. There's so much involved, but that person might be there just to push your buttons, to help you overcome, reaction or emotional reaction or anger or whatever it may be, because that's one of the things that your soul said it would come and work on this time, you know? And when I heard that, I thought, hey, I can pretty much find that person anywhere I go. You know what I'm saying? I see it. When you look at things differently, and I'm not saying you're going to get it right every time. Sometimes you forget because it's natural to get caught up in just trying to get from point A to point B and finish a task or whatever it may be, or bill to pay or money to earn or hamster wheel stuff, But if you can tap the brakes every once in a while and remember some of these things to, remember the magic or, I went out today in the middle of a hectic day and I bought my boss for last Christmas. I bought her a bird feeder and a couple little things to put under it because we're under so much hectic mess and we all love nature. And it was just such a, just a little strip mall with a little hedgerow on the side of the parking lot, but we had a little spot we could put a bird feeder. And not one person that works there doesn't stop out there and just look and gain a little bit of peace from the beauty of a cardinal or a bunch of blackbirds out there eating or some squirrels and some blue jays, whatever it may be, chipmunks. You get a little smile, try to do things like that, that it seems so little, but it means so much to your soul because we are of this earth, you know, and,
Indeed.
we got to remember that. And that's where all your magic is. That's where if you can go through the hard things and still find the magic, just like it might sound silly, but wasn't it Mr. Rogers who said in in the bad things, look for the good people, look for the helpers, you
Yep.
know? I know we've often said stuff like that, but it's true. There's a lot of bad times, but it depends on what you focus on too. It's like
Yeah.
that Cherokee story about the little boy, and he's sitting with his grandfather and they're fishing at the lake, and he looks up at his grandfather and he says, "Grandfather, I'm having nightmares. They're terrible. They're terrible." And he says, "Tell me, grandson, what are they of?" And he says, "Oh, there's a wolf, and at first this white wolf came, and he was kind and gentle, and I felt protected and warm. And then he went away, and this dark wolf came, and he made me feel scared, and he had a different disposition, and he was angry, and he made me angry too. And sometimes they come and they fight together, grandfather, and this scares me the most." And he said, "Well, what scares you about that, grandson?" And he says, "Well, which one will win, grand? The one you feed, grandson, the one you feed." So the one you feed. Go through your life, look for the magic. If you have to look hard, then look hard. Get through the stuff, understand this is school. Ghosts are real, Bigfoot exists, and wild things happen. Some things we'll never understand, but it's trying to figure it out. It's been a blast. Steve, what do you think? Hasn't it been a blast?
Yeah, it's the journey, and like I've,
Yeah.
I've said many times, I gave up looking for the answers a long time
Yep.
ago. I'm looking for the next set of questions,
I
and it's one
know.
of those things. If we had the answers, the journey wouldn't have been, and wouldn't be still as near as much fun as it
It's
is, and
been.
it always will be for me. I mean, this is just it's a part of me. It's what I
Yep.
do.
Yep. And it's so interesting. And, and again, the more we dig and the more we peel back the layers of that paranormal onion, you know, Steve and I always said, what if, what's in the middle of that onion? What if it's nothing? What if it's another onion? And, it's just, it seems like it's crazy, but it's been so much fun. And I've met the best people, and I've met the most wonderful light workers in the world. When you're in spiritual warfare, man, you want as many light workers around you as possible. And you want some warriors, and we know some. And it's just been wonderful. And to get to this stage of it, to be able to do something like that, Steve, and to be able to know that it wasn't us, it was them, it was their spirit guides, it was all of us, it was all of our souls and our knowledge and compassion, I guess, and wonderment of it all to
Yeah,
to go
it was
ahead and
just
go
that
all
combination of the right
in.
people in the right
Yeah.
place at the right time. We were all brought together through whatever means
Mhm.
and did what had to be done, and you can't beat that.
Right. It's like a band playing a song and hitting that note that just gives everybody goosebumps.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
and that's not the only one we've ever done. Steve and I have been involved in some crazy shit, right, Steve?
yeah, indeed. And
I know,
unfortunately,
but it's
though,
just for the ball.
we've come to
Huh?
the end of the show. Another 2 hours here. These
Just
fly
kidding.
by. When we're done, we'll have to have you back again. Yeah, we're actually
It's
10
been
minutes
fun.
over. I'm going to have to go in and edit some of this out to get
Take
it
out the
down to
part
my
where I
two
was
hours.
coughing.
Yeah, I'll take that
That
part out.
that
And
scared
the
you a little
part
bit.
where you, disappeared before you came back, I'll edit that
All
out.
my It's just been crazy. All my electrics just went out. My phone is updated. My phone has gone out. The complete battery went completely drained. I had to go plug it in.
And we're not
I,
even
I
in
just,
Mercury
we
in
had to fight to
retrograde
get this one
until
out.
later in December, but yeah,
Yeah,
something happens whenever we get together and talk. Stuff goes
yeah,
haywire
yeah.
sometimes.
The
But
the bad
Cisco,
side doesn't want you to know the answer is simple. Love is eternal, and light
that's it
beats dark every time.
every
There
time.
it is.
Cisco, as we part here, let folks know where they can find you.
Journey Through the Gate, that would be Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. That will be live. It usually runs about a 2-hour show. We have a blast. I have the longest intro on the inner tubes. Come and see it. It's fun. It'll make you feel good. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you giggle, make you forget about your day, and then come in and join one of the best live chat on the inner tubes. And those are my gatekeepers, and they're wonderful. They're light workers. They're people looking for answers and directions, and just enjoying the journey, just like Steve and I. And then on Monday night, well, we talk about all kinds of crazy things. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of
Yeah,
chocolate, and
I'm over
you're not
there
allowed to
on
poke
Monday
a hole.
nights.
Yep,
YouTube, Journey Through the Gate,
8 p.m.
Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'll put a link in the show notes and our book that we wrote together.
We are all children
We're all
in the
children of the
wilderness.
wilderness of the afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. get it on Amazon or wherever
There you
fine
go.
books are sold. You can have any
Yeah, but the
library or
story of that
store
biker,
order.
yeah, the story of the biker we told is in there in finite detail. And it's in a tale of two bikers because it was another biker that a group of my friends helped, and it was very near and dear, close to my heart. And they're both wonderful stories. It's filled with wonderful stories. Some will scare the hell out of you, but I made it through. I'm here to prove that. And I love you, Steve. Happy holidays. Look for the magic, everybody. It's out there. You got to, so
It's
you
out
might
there.
have
You
to
just got
dig,
to
but
look.
it's there. You
Man,
got to
thanks
want it.
again, Cisco.
I
And
love
I
you,
will see
baby.
you Monday night. Love you too. You take
Happy
care.
holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. And we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Cisco. Good night. I'm Steve Stockton. I'll see you a little further on down the trail. Tell your animals I said hi. Good night, everybody.